We're only 2 minutes in. Let's continue.
Well, you say maybe we're to blame for this. I've got a big question. It is, are we, particularly in college, are we preparing this generation to face the real world?
No, baby, no, we're not.
I actually think we're teaching them things that will make it much worse, that will increase suffering. In Coddling the American Mind, we talk about it's as if we are teaching a generation 3 great untruths. What doesn't kill you makes you weaker, obviously a dangerous thing to believe. Always trust your feelings, which sounds nice, but is completely wrong. And life is a battle between good people and evil people. And if you believe these 3 things, no wonder anxiety and depression is through.
Dude, there's so much in what he just said. There's so much in what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. So true. So true. We are told to attach ourselves to this idea of victimhood, that everything wrong that happens against you is something that you now wear forever and now need to talk about forever and advocate forever, trusting your feelings. It's like everybody reads a headline or a story or hears something or feels something and just goes with the immediate feeling that they have when they hear something. And if we all did that, the world would be in utter chaos. We'd be fighting and killing each other and crying in the streets, breaking up families, all of this different stuff if we just ran with the first emotion that we felt every single time we heard something. It's so important to just take a step back, take a deep breath, analyze why we felt the way we felt initially, and then try to break it down from there. But we don't even do that.
Critical thinking. And the last one, it was the world's divided into good people and evil people, and goes right back into what we were talking about a second ago. Like, the problem is not the problem is beating the people who are evil, who don't agree with me.
Yeah, 100%. People are not good and evil. And I think this is a trap that people on all ends of the spectrum fall into. I see conservatives talk about how evil leftists are. I see leftists talk about how evil conservatives are. You can argue which one does more than the other, but the whole premise is wrong. You know, people are nuanced. They have just different layers to themselves, and most people are trying to do what they feel like is best. So it's not within your best interest to view people as evil. I know we did a little Reddit thread that this girl wrote about how she hates conservative men, and she had a friend who she had been speaking to for a number of weeks, and then found out that he was conservative, and then just dropped him, didn't want to talk to him ever again, was disgusted, thought he was evil, all of these things. And the amount of energy it takes to feel that amount of hatred and to label somebody as evil like that in your heart and mind is just far more of a cost to you than it is to them.
Yeah, exactly. You pay the price for your own inability to relate to other human beings and extend them the benefit of the doubt. And I was talking to you, I experienced this recently. I'm in a church group, and look, I go to a pretty big church out here in LA, and there's a lot of people from a lot of walks of life that are there, and some of them are famous, some of them are writers in Hollywood and do their own media ventures and podcasts. And I was talking to some of them, and they have, one of them is a Black female writer in Hollywood. And another one has a podcast called, I'm not going to say what the name, but they talk as minorities about him and some minority friends about movies and stuff from a minority perspective. And I'm like, oh, I could take that as a signal of like, oh, these people don't agree with me on politics and don't start from the same worldview or the same values or premises that I do as a conservative, but they're liberal, so I'm not going to, engage with them, or I'm going to make assumptions about them that's going to keep me from connecting with them as human beings. But, being in a different church setting, it wasn't about politics. It was about human beings, and we talked, and I feel like I have a much better understanding of where they're coming from, and they're not these extremists in this case. I mean, there are extremists out there, but I made the point, I'm like, it just goes to show you that not everyone that you see is like one of these teachers on libs of TikTok who's trying to groom kids or something just because they happen to be on their side of the aisle from you on certain things. And it makes you a better person, a better critical thinker, a better debater, a better understander of your own beliefs, and and someone who's more persuasive to the other side when you can actually understand and state their arguments as well as they can, and you can put yourself in their shoes even if you disagree.
100%. Let's keep watching.
The roof.
Yeah, of course. Now, Brian, why are you proud to be a Gen Zer?
I feel like it's just in my opinion, and I don't want to offend any baby boomers, but I like that, for example, if I want information right now, I can go on my phone, type in keywords, and I'll find it in the snap of my fingers. I also feel like my generation is just...
It's interesting because, that is one of the benefits we have as being members of Gen Z, but nobody utilizes that benefit. We're never utilizing the benefit we have of literal computers in our pockets to do research in a moment's notice, even though that's sitting right in front of us, which is so wild.
a little bit more accepting. I mean, I'm a gay man, I wear acrylic nails. My generation, I don't really see them like scrutinizing me for my nails or anything, but like some of my family members didn't really understand it at first. So I feel like maybe my generation is just a little bit more open and accepting.
Really?
It's a double-edged sword with that one, isn't it? Because it's like our Gen Z is more accepting of identities, of stepping out of the bounds of traditional gender roles and just tradition in general, but it is completely unaccepting of the people who don't choose to do that and who are less comfortable with that or just don't believe in those things. So it's you know, what's the phrase? You can be so open-minded that your brain falls out. You know
that was
what
my
I mean?
one thing I was going to say that Alma didn't say yet, and you took the line. So yes, it is a case of people being so open-minded. The negative side of being overly accepting is that you accept bad ideas.
Right.
Your mind is so open that your brains fall out, and you let go of good ideas because they're seen as traditional. And I think Brad makes that, if he didn't already, he makes that point in this video of saying, you know, free speech was something that prior generations got right. Yeah. And Gen Z seems to be against that if it's, you know, being hateful or bigoted as they define it. But anyways, we'll get into that.
Yeah, it's just like we're rejecting the old at our own expense. You don't have to reject everything that the people before you
Which
did.
is also, by the way, not being open-minded.
Yeah.
If you're not open-minded to tradition, if you're not open-minded to, if you don't give it a fair shake, if you just dismiss it out of hand as all traditionalism is our bigoted, ignorant ancestors and they don't know anything and they're just horrible people. It's kind of that same logic at play of like, they're evil because there were sins committed in the past where they did overextend their bounds. But rather than picking apart what's worth keeping and what's not, we're just going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We know better because everyone needs to be accepted now. All these new ideas and all the old ones need to be rejected. It's just such simplistic logic that's driving, I think, a lot of how Gen Z is going about things now.
Which, to be fair, is what every generation like complains about the generation after it and says like you're rejecting everything, you're bringing in this modernity, you don't want to work as hard. So I want to make sure that we always recognize that this is going to be a conversation that we're having in 30 years from now with Gen Z talking down to the next generation and saying you guys don't want to work and you're rejecting the things we built for you and all of this stuff. It always happens, and it's just that pendulum that continues to just swing and swing and swing. Although it does maybe feel like it's more dramatic now, and it could be because we're living in it, or it could be because it is. And well, we'll get down to that.
I think so.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Really? More open and accepting. Why do you say that?
Well, I just think about when you guys were in high school, how would an openly gay person have been treated compared to our
Oh,
generation?
they wouldn't be openly gay.
Well, sure. Right.
No,
And I think that there's a lot of progress that has been made for the good. And when boomers harken back to the good old days, they often don't think about what the good old days were like for people who aren't like themselves.
Who feels that Gen Z is more fragile than previous generations? Raise your hand.
I'm
Do you think they're more sensitive, more fragile? You said you think that your generation is much more open. Why are comedians not even willing to come on college campuses anymore? Because they're scared to death they're going to say something that offends.
It's not.
And I'll pause there. Obviously, this is not Dr. Phil's problem, but it's not just comedians. We're talking scientists. We're talking researchers. We're talking conservative political thinkers. We're talking experts across the board who are either unwilling to go on college campuses because of the rejection that they're going to face, or are just rejected by the college campus for whatever reason, for their background, for saying a certain word. Who did we have that was coming to speak? He was going to, I think, MIT or Harvard, don't quote me on this obviously, to speak about space. And they wouldn't allow him on the campus because in a separate talk he did, or a tweet that he put out, he said he didn't agree with the premise of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It wasn't even the subject matter of the speech that he was going to give.
Dr. Abbott.
Dr. Abbott. So it wasn't even the subject matter of Dr. Abbott's speech on the campus, yet they wouldn't allow him because of comments he had made outside of that. And what you've done is exactly what the expert who wrote Coddling of the American Mind talks about, is you're actually hindering students. You're actually not making them ready for the world. You're actually hindering their learning by not allowing these people to come and speak to them, even if they disagree.
Just an impression. I mean, polling shows you what Generation Z thinks of concepts like free speech or freedom of expression, and they think things like hate speech need to be stopped. And that's one of the lessons they're learning wrong from history. There's a lot that we can take from past generations that they actually got right. And free speech is definitely one of those things because progress.
And he's right about this. I like that he's taking a clearly nuanced view of this because he's talking about, the older generation might not have treated gay people so great, so much so that they don't even feel comfortable coming out and being open about who they are. And that's wrong. But what's wrong now is that this new generation is rejecting everything from the older generation, even things like free speech, which is fundamental to a pluralistic society.
That Gen Z cares about can only happen when you have free speech.
What do you want to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that there's a misconception that cancel culture or social repercussions is something new. It's not. I mean,
Okay, let's pause because I recognize this girl. I know Cam recognizes this girl, Victoria from TikTok. Have you ever debated her?
Yeah, I've debated Victoria several times. I don't know. There's a little mutual respect, so we don't usually go like super hard, but I did watch her debate Michael Knowles.
I saw that too. She debated Michael Knowles on abortion. I don't think you saw that, Taylor. But I know her from just being, she's probably like one of the most well-known leftist on TikTok as far as defending her views, at least in the female sphere of things. So I recognized her immediately, and I had a feeling that she was probably going to be on the pro side of cancel culture and censorship and things like that. So I'm curious to hear what she has to say.
we saw the Chicks, who were formerly known as the Dixie Chicks. I believe that they criticized the war on terror, and there were parties to burn their CDs and radio stop playing their music.
Right.
So social repercussions have always existed. I think that just as a generation, we're becoming more aware of how bigotry, even if it's in the form of a joke, really negatively impacts people. And so I think that while social repercussions are nothing new, what we penalize people for saying is changing. And I think that that's a positive thing.
Stereotypes used in comedic stand-up is just simply like not okay anymore.
Says who? Says who that it's not okay? I think it's okay. Taylor thinks it's okay. Pretty sure Cam thinks it's okay. He's giving a nod. So who gets to decide what is and isn't okay? And if we don't have free speech in comedy, baby, you have it nowhere. That is like the final frontier as far as free speech goes, is comedians being able to make jokes about whoever they want to make jokes about, because it is exactly that. A joke. And if you can't take a joke, don't listen to the comedian. It's really as simple as that. I'll see these like stand-up videos on TikTok and YouTube where hecklers start screaming at comedians for being offensive. Why did you show up? Do you know what comedy is?
Yeah.
It's literally comedy. It's literally a joke.
What do you think about the idea that the people were angry that the Dixie Chicks didn't support the war on terror, so they burn their CDs? Is that an example of cancel culture?
I wouldn't say that's an example of cancel culture. I think that's very much like what we talk about when it comes to voting with your wallet, how, we're not going to buy from Ulta Beauty anymore because they have two biological men doing a podcast about girlhood, so I'm not going to go there anymore. I shouldn't have said we. I don't think you guys shop at Ulta. But I'm not going to be shopping there anymore, so that's a little different.
Right, you're a consumer deciding not to use their product. It's not the same as, I don't know that if there were petitions of people saying, hey, to their record label, you can't carry their CDs, or Walmart, you can't sell their CDs anymore. I'm guessing that was a time when we were still on CDs. Sure. But that would be more in the realm of cancel culture. If Spotify yanked their music over their comments or over their opinions, that would be like something that's more enforced. I don't think that just people saying I don't like something you said, so I'm not going to listen to your music anymore. It's not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, it's going to be like a fine line there. So it depends, because you have these platforms who can do that very same thing, and you go, well, it's a private business, they get to do whatever they want, and that is true. But then you have to get into the Section 230 debate and whether or not they benefit from being able to do whatever it is they want without policing certain things and being super strict on others. So it's a nuanced thing to get into. If a private company didn't like what the Dixie Chicks said, and they said, you're not going to be able to record in our studio anymore, is that cancel culture?
No,
you know what I mean? No,
but the energy saying that this you should be eliminated from public, like being a part of the public sphere.
Exactly.
That's to me the cancel culture.
I agree.
And people at that time, I don't think were, and I mean, I don't remember the freaking Dixie Chicks example, but
I don't remember this
I'm saying
at all
that
either.
there is a distinction there of like somebody choosing no longer to use your product is not the same thing as this whole PC mob coming after you and saying you should be deplatformed, you shouldn't be allowed to be in public anymore, no one should be able to go to your concerts, sponsors should abandon you. That's cancel culture.
That is. And it's just like, it's like these videos that you get of the quote Karens on the internet, and then somebody doxes them and finds their job, and suddenly the job is getting 50 calls a day about how this woman needs to be fired, and the job might not even be aware of the video on the internet, but they're just getting inundated with so many people talking to them that they go, oh, I've got to fire Karen. I don't know what you're going to do. You're going to keep calling me. So there's obviously different levels to how this plays out and how it affects people.